All right.
Okay, hold on 1 second, sister. We're going to tag people in. I'm going to do it on my phone.
All right.
Hold on 1 second, sister. We're going to tag people in. Do it on my phone. Hold tight, family. All right. Hold on 1 second, sister. We're going to tag people in. Do it on my phone. Hold tight, family. All right. Doing my countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are on. We say all praises be to the Creator, all power to his people. In the name of Yahshua, the Black Revolutionary Messiah, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, in the spirit of truth and the words of peace. Shalom Aleichem. Giving a special salute to the Black Messiahs. Our motto is stop waiting for a Savior and be one. Stop waiting for a Savior and be one. Excited tonight, family, have our first stick, and stick is the research division of the Black Messiah movement. STIC stands for Society to Increase Cultural Knowledge. And tonight we're doing our first book review. Our first book review, Dr. Amos Wilson, Black on Black Violence, the Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation, and the Service of White Domination, written by Dr. Amos Wilson. So if you have any questions tonight, feel free to put them in the chat. The discussion is going to be led by our research coordinator, Sister Sharon. So without further ado, family, we're going to get started. Greetings, sister.
Greetings.
And I'm
Greetings,
going to
everybody.
follow your lead. So just take it from the top, how you want to proceed with this outstanding book. And I think you will agree. This is probably the best analysis of Black on Black violence that we have. I have not seen a better analysis of Black on Black violence than we have with Dr. Amos Wilson's work. So take it away, sister.
All right. Well, like you said, and mine has a different cover, same book, same author. So why did I get into reading this? I guess that's the first thing that people will probably want to know. People may say, well, isn't Black on Black violence still violence? Um, I got into it because I'm a Black person. I live in a predominantly Black neighborhood. Pretty much for the majority of my life, I've lived in predominantly Black neighborhoods. I think maybe from the age of 10 through 16, I lived in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, and that was predominantly white. So reading this book, um, really shines a light on things, but also just having the personal experience from living in the quote unquote hood versus living
Mhm.
in the not hood,
Right.
um, just shows how society deals with crime when it is concerning Black people, whether it's Black on Black crime, Black on white crime, crime against Black people.
Mhm.
It's not the same. And so Dr. Amos really breaks it down, and really at the root core of it, unfortunately, and which is something that I think many of us not even knowingly experience, is self-alienation.
Mhm.
So how do you know if you're self-alienated? You might ask yourself. So, and reading the book really broke it down. It was kind of like you go to Google, you look up symptoms, and you go, gosh, I've got a lot of these symptoms. Well, how do
Mhm.
you know? So some of the symptoms of self-alienations, one of the main symptoms that let me know that I was suffering from it as well. One of the main ways that you know this is you can't be yourself like you would fully be yourself in the
Mm-hmm.
presence of someone who is white.
Right.
And by that, I mean in the presence of someone who is white when you're in a professional setting. And the reason that you can't is because many times your job is dependent upon you behaving a certain way, which is appropriate to them. So you begin to drown out that part of you that would normally, in a normal setting, around people who you feel safe around, you would have a different response because you don't even control the environment and you're in, the job that you go to, the money that you're making and where you spend it, the place that you live. You can't have that normal response. So it's like you're an alien within yourself. So this is what's happening in our neighborhoods as well. We don't own the businesses. We don't own the banks. We don't own the apartment complexes. We don't own WIC. We don't own welfare. We don't own the businesses where we go to for treatment and healthcare services. So in any form, way, or fashion, we cannot have that safe space to be Black and to
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's something that we can love and love, you know, intimately without offending someone. So he speaks about why do, and this is something, the Black on Black violence, and this is something that is happening now. So this book, what tripped me out was this book was written years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, more than 20 years ago, this book was written,
Right.
and it's still relevant today. So we have to ask ourselves why. Black on Black violence is not just something that happens because Black people are ignorant or we're lazy, or we're not lazy. We built this country. We're not lazy. We work for free. Um, but we have to ask why, if people want the violence to stop, why is it still happening? And why is it predominantly happening in Black neighborhoods and to Black people? I live in I would say it's predominantly Black. I'm in Durham, I'm in the cut. But one of the deepest things that I noticed um, was whenever there is a crime committed against someone and they are murdered or assaulted, it is never against a white person. The two people on both sides of me are white. It is never against a white person or someone, who looks like them. It is almost always a Black person that has gotten shot, their car broken into, hit and run, you name it. Arguments in the store, followed around. It is always a Black person. And so the victim is often Black and the perpetrator is often Black. So we then have to look at why are we targeting each other? Why is this continuing to happen? And I'm beginning to see that it's a trend with younger and younger people. So I think that before it was happening, but now it's like fresh out of school on the streets. And now it's just bypassing the schools to on the streets. And so he speaks about why it's happening. So one of the things, and I'll read from it, I actually looked at some places in the book. So basically what he speaks about is how it's not necessarily that Black people are more criminalistic. We're not. There are just as many white criminals, if not more, than
Right.
Black criminals. The problem is that who defines what is crime? So we don't control the definition of crime in this country. So they define what is crime and put a blackface stamp on it. So right off the bat, you're criminalized because of the way you look. and the way you dress and the way you may speak and the swagger. So it's automatically perceived as criminal.
Mhm.
And Black people have always had this thing where the vast majority of Black people want to be seen as law abiding, and they are
Right.
law abiding, but that doesn't help them. And so in chapter 1, he says, as long as African Americans perform according to the roles prescribed for them by the white American community ego complex, as long as they maintain their defined places and form the background against which the preferred white American complex is projected, as long as they reasonably fit the self-serving stereotypes imposed on them by the white American complex, the African American community attains a functional invisibility, a
Mhm.
shadowy existence at the periphery of the consciousness of the white community. So it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Um, and
Benign
so
neglect.
Right. And so as long as we're within the constraints of where they feel we should fit, then things are fine. But now some are pushing through. So you do have some that are pushing through that you know, have pushed through because they were allowed. So then they allow a certain amount that get through, and those are what I call coons. So they are the deepest part of self-alienation, and they project that out. And so the scary thing was, he was speaking about this type of person that even in the midst of Black people, they kind of prefer to be associated with what white people feel is appropriate. And so they're even successful because of that. So it made me think of all the people that probably are Black and have certain power in Durham that could really change things, but feel that by them doing so, they might lose that cushy seat that they have. And so they won't. So you have to really ask why not? So these are questions that he's posing, he's starting to bring to the light. But the main thing that he talks about is why the Black on Black crime is persisting, and how did we get to this point. So in today's news, we have to talk about, I think we talked about the other day the incident which happened in Atlanta, where this white male went and decided to shoot up some places and kill some people,
Right.
which was very unfortunate. But what they did was they humanized him, and by me saying they, I mean the media, and who controls the media. So immediately they humanized him. They didn't show the pictures or anything of the victims, made it known that I had heard some rumor about them being sex workers or something like that. But basically they started to chip away at that element that helps people connect with each other. It makes them
Mhm.
human,
Right.
and
Like
this
they
is
always do us.
there you go. And so
Mhm.
this is a form of white supremacy, and something that is a taboo to even speak about, because many
Right.
people think it doesn't exist, it's all in your head, you're just making it up. If you really want to get yourself something, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but you don't own any bootstraps, so how can you then do this? And so by this white supremacy and aggression that's being shown, this aggression is being shown 100 times over towards the Black male who was at the head of the family. And so there was no power given to him to protect his family, to make money for his family, to be that strong person in the community. That power was taken away by someone that was even more aggressive, you know, aggressive worldwide, globally. And so what you're now dealing with the black on black crime is this male that's coming along, male, female, it doesn't matter, that's feeling this inferior complex because, you know, somebody is playing Al Capone in his hood and everybody wants to be Al Capone. You know, everybody wants to be him. No one wants to be the victim. And so there's this trend of wanting to be the big bad wolf and blow the door in. And it doesn't matter that, you know, the person whose house you're blowing down looks like you, so long as you're not the victim. So that is the big thing. And so being painted as the loser, the victim, the unemployed, by society begins to, like, who wants to love someone that is painted like that? So this seed of self-hate begins, you know, and the self-hate begins to spread. You know, you don't want to have the image of the one who's on the news being guilty or being lynched or being shot. So it's society now is like a game of Russian roulette, you know, where, you know, it's kill or be killed. And so that's pretty much what we're dealing with. And I think lack of knowledge of, I was reading this part in the book where chapter 2 starts. It's the very first page. And this has been going on since Black people basically got rights. And these are statistics. This one is from the City Sun in 1990. Within 5 years after the Civil War, the Black percentage of the prison population went from close to 0%, because obviously we were slaves, to 33%. Then, as now, the Black prison population performed an economic and political function for the benefit of whites. So, you know, we're losing when we go to jail. We're losing when we're on the streets. You know, we are not hired at the top of the line. So the alienation continues, because even if you're a quote unquote good citizen, you somehow are still a loser in society. You know, so the seed of hate is being fertilized further by those. So one of the things that I noticed that he pointed out was that, you know, Black people that want to do well typically will mimic what white people that are doing well do. You go to you go to work, you go to church, you become an active part in your community. You maybe are a part of the baseball team. You do all these things that speak to you being a good person in your community. So if that's the case, then why is there still violence in the Black community? If our communities mimic the white communities, the main reason is because we don't own ours. We don't own it. And
Black
so
economics.
Black economics, and this is by design. This is not an accident. It's not a coincidence. This is by design. My husband and I were talking about how a woman that was on some show said that she went and applied at a bank for a business loan. She was denied. I think within
It was $5,000.
it was like $5,000 for a business loan. She went back how many months?
A month later.
A month later, same bank, applied for a car loan for how much?
30,000.
30,000, and was approved. So it really is by design that we are at the bottom of the totem pole. Even someone just coming into the country can quickly get a business loan and open a business within a Black neighborhood before a Black person who has lived there for 20 years and showed that they care about the neighborhood and they want to see it grow. Nope, you're not getting that.
Maybe a grant, depending on where they're from.
I just noticed that in our neighborhood, probably maybe 5 miles away, the Palace, the African restaurant.
Mhm.
Yeah, did you know they were closed?
I think you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, so they were closed down because the owner decided to rent to someone else.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's probably one of the big things. Like they're making it very white over there. So let's see. I also found some other points in here. So like I was saying, Black people are not more criminals. It has to basically do with who is deciding what is crime and the punishment for the crime.
Right.
So for a Black person, and I'm reading this here, leniency is for the affluent, severity for the indignant. Only 18% of white-collar embezzlers go to prison for an average of 15 months, and many have their sentences dropped. But 89% of working and poor people convicted of larceny, same crime, spend an average of 10 and a half years behind bars. Some examples might serve. A judge imposed a small fine on a stockbroker who had made $20 million through illegal stock manipulation, and on the same day sentenced an unemployed Black man to 1 year in jail for stealing a $100 television set from a truck shipment.
So is this what you call affluenza?
Say again?
I think they call it affluenza when the affluent
Yeah, pretty
get
much.
more breaks. Yeah,
Right.
affluenza.
So like, it's like, all right, well, what's the penalty for the rich? I'll take it.
Right,
It's
right.
nice. It must be nice for them. I don't, I'm hoping that I never get committed for a crime because I ain't rich.
Right.
You know, so I think that, crime is tolerated with white people. And when Black people have a crime that they've committed, it could be because they're starving, and they had to steal food for their child. They're not given the necessary tools to even defend themselves when
Right.
they go before a judge. So, when you're rich, you have money to get a good lawyer. Your lawyer actually cares because that's how they're making money, by keeping you out of jail, versus a public defender. They're going to get paid whether you go to jail or not. In fact, the more criminals, the more they get paid. So, there's no real motive for them to keep you out of jail.
Prison industrial complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, another thing that it was saying here was the belief that Blacks are more violence prone leads to a double standard in police response. When white and Black teenagers commit the same offense, police are 7 times more likely to charge Black teenagers with a felony, and courts are more likely to imprison the teenager. Now, this book was written over 20 years ago, and we're still dealing with this.
Still dealing with it.
Still
30 years ago.
Yeah. Like what, 85? Was this book written?
1990, 30 years ago. 31 years ago.
It's crazy. And so that's another thing. So these are not even speaking about the Black on Black violence. This is just talking about what happens when, I guess, we're caught. So, white Americans who are by far significantly affected by Black street crime project themselves as its most frequent victims. So this part I thought was funny. You know, Black people don't just show up in white neighborhoods looking to rob them, rape their daughters, plunder. As a matter of fact, many of them come to the hood for weed or for, you know, whatever they know they can't get or don't want to be caught getting in their own neighborhood. They come to the hood.
Right.
And so for some reason they paint themselves this vulnerable victim. And so when a Black person, you know, like this boy Ahmed Aubrey got killed just jogging through a white neighborhood, not by a police officer, you know, by someone who perceived that he was a criminal. And they were the criminals. They were murderous, you know, but for some reason they felt like he was the criminal because he was Black. You know, we talk about snitching, basically. This part I was reading, you know, there's an issue sometimes with you know, community. He's talking about the African American community demands that even if guilty, Black arrestees, detainees, and prisoners not be subjected to unnecessary force. So in Black communities, when there's a crime committed, you have the victim and you have the criminal. And if the victim is dead, they can't speak for themselves, but no one alive wants to snitch on the criminal. And then when the criminal gets caught, whether he's taken by force or he's locked up, if he has so much as a scratch on him, then, you know, we as Black people, we get angry because we feel like, well, he's being mistreated by the police. And so it's still sowing the seed of self-hate that we can't even humanize the victims when they look like us. You know, so, and this is by design because white people on whole never portray Black people as the victim. And so the killer or the perpetrator is just doing what white people are doing, victimizing Black people. And by him doing that, he feels that he's somehow above being Black, you know, closer to being white, carrying out the deed, you know. You know, we were laughing about, have you ever watched the Boondocks?
Indeed.
So we were laughing about Uncle Ruckus.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's really like an Uncle Ruckus syndrome, but a lot of people don't see it as I guess cooning, or I guess cooning is, you know, you shucking and jiving to entertain. You're cakewalking, but they are cakewalking. They're cakewalking with a gun. You know, you're trying to see who can kill the most victims, who can be more entertaining, who can be the bigger boogeyman in the hood. You know, all this to prove that you're not a victim, but you biggest victim, you know. So it's almost like they're just in the sunken place.
Kind of like a false sense of empowerment.
Yeah, I really think that's what it is. It's like, you know, nobody wants to be the victim. And Black people are really, you know, we're a small piece of the American pie.
Very small.
And so
numerically speaking, it's very small.
Numerically speaking, but for some reason, we are portrayed as the ones that commit the most crimes. You know, take for example this recent shooting in Colorado at the grocery store.
Right.
So now the victims are white and the killer is Muslim. So of course they were quick to put that out there. You know, they were quick to put it out. And you know, it's just, it's disturbing. It's really disturbing, and that is not by an accident. So, you know, he talks about the criminalization of the Black male, and I think that that's a really big part of what is happening in society. It's been happening since slavery stopped. It's been happening. I feel like it picked up pace when you had welfare. Welfare came into the picture, and as a Black man, if you were not married to the woman, or even if you were married, you couldn't get welfare. If you weren't married, you couldn't stay in the home. So you then became homeless, you know, and no one's going to starve. So then you became criminalish, and you know, it's just it's dysfunctional. So I was reading about, I have all these little notes, places that I really looked at. So this part was pretty deep. The psychopolitical need of white America to dominate Black America in a variety of ways requires that it neutralizes by any means necessary any type of Black male empowerment, actual or potential, which may threaten its hegemony. Two of these means involve the criminalization of the Black male and of the Black community in general. The criminalization of the Black male by white America immensely enhances its psychocultural and material advantages. Criminalization of the Black male and the African American community in general by the white American community psychopolitically benefits the latter community in a myriad of ways, including the following. So, and I'll just be short and quick. So basically it benefits them because if they come into a Black neighborhood and happen to shoot someone, then they look like the victim. They're so-called afraid, or they can, you know, deny that they were criminals. It's their fault. I was here minding my own business. I own this property here. I have a right to be here. If you go to their neighborhood, you get shot. Well, he was someplace he shouldn't have been. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. So it's a reason for them to deny you access to where they live and where they do business, and to gain access to where you live. So one of the things that I have always noticed as a kid, and definitely as an adult, and definitely deeply in the South, was, you know, I have friends, I know white people that could probably go an entire week, and by choice, if they don't want to see a Black person, they don't have to. They don't have to. They can shop at an all-white store, all-white supermarket, go online, white delivery person, go to the golf club, no one Black, maybe the janitor, but they're not seeing him. Whereas a Black person, that is not the case. You know, wherever you go, you're going to interact with someone white. And so you self-alienate once again, because this is their world. You just a squirrel trying to get a nut. So wherever you are, especially as a Black male, if you're wrong and they say you're wrong, you're wrong. You know, and so that's pretty much what he is pointing out here, that politically, culturally, even religiously, that ownership of self has been taken away. So you can't move in the rhythm that you're used to, the rhythm that you were born with. you know, so it's like you're dancing to a tune that's flat, and it's not the tune that you're used to listening to, so you're always going to get the steps wrong.
Right.
You
Good
know,
point.
so one of the ways that quote unquote society has tried to help with the black on black crime in the neighborhood, you know, you had these white liberal led programs, which I don't like. I've never trusted them, because I feel like if they're so great, why is the problem still here?
Exactly.
But they don't benefit us. Again, you have to look at who's pulling the puppet strings and how it benefits us. A perceived level of black criminal activity, especially if confined to the American community, provides both primary and secondary gains for the white American collective ego complex. So I often feel like when there's Black Lives Matter movement and I'm looking around and I don't see real black people, I'm looking like, where's Shaki? Where's Tyrone? Where's Keisha? And I don't see any of them. You know, I see Caitlin, I see Brad, you know, and I get it, like some want to help, but true help is you coming out to where I am, you know, and doing more than just giving a charity. Is actually actively being involved when you see someone that looks like you doing something that you know is wrong, and you checking them at that point, not marching so that you can get a Snapchat selfie to say you were there and you spoke up, and putting a little sign in your yard. And so I definitely think these are just showy things to make them look good in society, and say, well, you know, we're trying to help them. We're trying to do so much to help them. But if you really follow a lot of the paper trails, a lot of them aren't.
Right.
You know, so I just don't think it's kind of like now with the whole presidency and everything now, that, you know, we have 46 in office. Now you have some black people that are like, all right, well, let's talk about reparations. Hold on now. Too soon. But it's like, when is the right time? When is the right time? It will never be the right time. When is the appropriate time to kneel because you feel that your brother has been slain without cause? If it's not at a football game when people are saying the national anthem, if you do it at a store, you're wrong. If you show it online, you're wrong. You're not, you know, patriotic. Ain't no one more patriotic than a black man that has served in the military and come home and is still being treated like dirt, and still has to pull that rage inside and function every day. There's no one more patriotic. And that's the struggle. And so that black man that is the quote unquote do-gooder is self-alienated, whereas the one that is committing black on black crime, he's just like, you know what, I'm not going to be the victim. So according to Amos, he's at least, I guess, a touch closer to who he is, because he's just not going to be told what to do. He's going to do what the victor is doing, even though the victor is victimizing those who look like him. He would prefer to be him than to be the victim. Even knowing that at some point it's going to get him killed. But because he hates himself, because of how society has painted him, he knows he's going to die. He knows that this is going to happen, but he would rather die like that than continue to be made into a victim.
And take other victims along with them.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. So I was, there's one that, there's a parable in here. And this is on page 43. A man named John once owned a dog who had won for his master many prizes, helped him to become wealthy, win the envy of his friends, and even helped to save his master's life on a number of occasions. As the vicissitudes of capitalism would have it, there came a time when there was no longer any money in the dog show business. This situation changed Master John's feelings towards his once prized possession. He could often be heard saying, "He is lazy, a good-for-nothing cur. All he wants to do is lie around and eat up my food. I wish he'd just go away." Filled with hatred and resentment, Master John, by various cruel and ingenious means, drove his dog rabidly mad. One day, as fate would deem it, the mad dog attempted to attack its master. Master John felled him a single shot from his elephant gun. Because there was a law against shooting dogs, Master John was tried before a jury of his peers. Master John, as represented by his lawyer, pleaded self-defense. "It is cut and dried," his lawyer exhorted. The dog was mad, and in his madness he sought to attack his master, who in self-defense shot him. His driving the dog mad, and thus allegedly having precipitated the dog's attack, as argued by the prosecutor, is irrelevant and immaterial. Has not a man the right to self-defense? Besides, he was only a dog, prone by dog nature to go mad. So I'll stop right there. Because basically Black people in this country have been put in a position to become hostile. So it's almost like you starving someone, and then when they go to steal a piece of bread, you call them a criminal, but you own the store where the bread is sold. And you walk past this man every day and see that he's hungry, and you're not offering him any bread. So what else can he do but steal it? Especially if that man is the one making the bread. So, in this country, Black people, we're the biggest consumers. These jobs, especially now in COVID, we're the ones that are working and doing these jobs. We're the ones that are getting sick. We're not getting sick because we're not following the ordinances. We're getting sick because we have to go in. We don't have health insurance. And even if we do, we're going to white doctors who are not necessarily prescribing us the things that we need to stay healthy. So again, by design, it's rigged for us to fail, or at least be slowed down enough to where we'll never catch up and win the race. We're just in the race. Nobody wants to be the loser. Nobody wants to be the mad dog. So he speaks about the white ruling class projecting a self-image and public image, which are liberal and nonviolent. However, the reality is, if they were nonviolent, Black people wouldn't get killed by the police with tax money that they pay the police. Something interesting in my neighborhood, I found out there's probably been about 4 or 5 shootings over here within the past month. There's a cop that sits out here. Finally, one of my neighbors went and said, "Hey, like, what are you guys doing? Like, did you hear the shooting? I noticed that I saw the car sitting there, but it didn't move. Like, were you calling for help or something?" He's like, "No, we're not here for that." And so the neighbor's like, "Well, why are you here?" To protect the copper on the houses that are being built. I can't make this up. I can't make this up.
It makes sense, though. That would explain a lot.
I can't make this up. I said,
that
what?
Would explain a lot.
I can't.
Because that's been the thing. They said the purpose of police is not to protect Black people, it's to protect property.
Yep. Yep. And so, one of my neighbors was just saying that he didn't feel like, they were necessarily there to protect any of us. And that, we should start having some sort of neighborhood watch. And that he feels like they only actually come out when someone is dead. And I said, pretty much, pretty much. A dead body is more valuable than a living one, a dead Black body anyway. So yeah. So where was the other one that I was reading here? Here we go. So one of the things that I think has been happening since slavery, I would say, is just, the behavior that Black people have, I guess, as a result of not being accepted and what they do to become accepted. I don't want to say weak, but yeah, maybe those that are maybe weaker. So it says, and this is 49, the white American community severely punishes through social ostracism. So nobody wants to feel, shut out. Ridicule, mockery, employment discrimination, physical assault, and denial of fundamental civil rights. Those African Americans who openly identify with and espouse African culture, history, values, autonomy, and liberation. African Americans who demonstrate an apparent rejection of their African identity, African culture, history, and values, and acknowledge their subordination to European domination are rewarded. So basically, Uncle Ruckus. We talked about this is Uncle Ruckus. This is I call this the making of a coon and a criminal. This segment. Are rewarded with increased opportunities, material, and social compensation, although restricted relative to white Americans. By these and other methods, the oppressed African American is alienated from the possibility of developing a functionally realistic perception of reality, knowledge of self, self-control, self-esteem, self-acceptance, positive self-feeling, ability to form affectionate and practical social relationships with each other, African Americans, and identification with an undistorted positive African cultural and ethnic image. The Eurocentric psychopolitical socioeconomic domination of African people is founded and sustained by its historical and current perversion of these characteristics. So this is still the case today. I looked and saw in California that they were now making it a law not to discriminate against Black people for wearing their hair like they want. Like, why did that need to be made a law? Why did you have to make that a law for someone to say, you know what, I recognize that your hair doesn't grow straight and you can wear it the way it grows.
Right, the Crown Act. They're trying to do that in North Carolina as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's hair, but it's definitely always been an expression of who we are. And it's always been something that I felt like was taboo for them to talk about, taboo to touch. It was something that they can't mimic, similar to, like, we were talking about the music when we were talking about rap music. But now it's like we don't own the rights to the music. You know, so now the message that is getting out culturally to, you know, give those little seeds of knowledge and breadcrumbs. And it's not all rappers and it's not all musicians, but most of it has been tainted. Um, and this is what our kids are listening to, you know. So let's see. And he was just saying that basically by white Americans saying that Black people are violent, they kind of come up with these prophecies about what's going to happen. So now they have one, and you probably know where they're trying to criminalize students so that they can kind of follow them outside of school. Like, oh yeah, no, he lives in a broken home. He's more likely to commit a crime.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let me follow him around. Meanwhile, we're not running in schools, shooting up schools.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just mass shooting. The shootings and things that occur in Black communities, it's never a complete stranger. You've seen them around, or there's some beef, or it's in a crossfire, but they're the neighbors. It's not some random I just want to kill thing. You know, it's never a random, you know, evil act, but it is, you know, but it's not just a random thing. But by us not controlling the narrative, they can pretty much shape this so-called prophecy of what we're going to do as much as they want. So, you know, it was, you know, interesting to me. I think I put a little sticky note somewhere.
Now in Durham, they were trying to, I don't know if the policy is still in effect, but they were trying to track third graders.
Yeah, like what
Because
the
they felt like third graders were more susceptible. Third graders are more. That's when they could tell if the kid was going to be in a gang or not in the third
right,
grade. So they would track them. They were trying to do
right.
that in Durham. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, you know, and my thing is, you know, they're busy doing all this tracking, but they're not tracking the serial killers. They're
Nope.
not tracking people that are rapists. They're not doing the right tracking. The tracking is to do this school to prison pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
you know. You know, so it's just like we don't control that, and that's another thing that I think needs to change. You know, that needs to change. I had written something, knowledge of our history equals freedom, ultimately by building a time bridge, you know, to a way back. You don't have any breadcrumbs to lead us out of a dark place. So we're kind of, Black people are kind of like Hansel and Gretel. And by us not controlling our history, our music, those are breadcrumbs that lead back to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been confiscated, or rather someone's telling us where's an appropriate way to sprinkle it. No, don't sprinkle them the way out. Sprinkle them, you know, further deep in this darkness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so denial of us being allowed to be taught these things is really very telling. You know, you're denying the access of being taught history, which illuminates who I am. You know, and by me not knowing who I am, I can't form my own prophecy now. You're controlling the narrative of who I am by
Mm-hmm.
the news, by the music, by what you think I should wear that's appropriate or say, or by me living a certain place or eating foods. And so all of this is part of the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the identity crisis, as he speaks about in chapter 5, you know, which is a big reason. I think I have written here, the Black on Black criminal finds it easier to identify with the aggressor. He becomes one, thinking it liberates him from becoming a victim. He begins to imitate the aggressor, thus hating what they hate, Black bodies. You know, so, you know, we have to find a way to retrieve our hijacked image.
Right.
You know, because right now we're not controlling the the plane, the train at all. And we're dealing with displaced aggression. So a lot of
Right.
these, you know, a lot of young people, they have a reason to be mad. A lot of them feel that, you know, the older generation has dropped the ball somehow, but they don't realize that the older generation had the ball, but somebody just coated it in butter. Say, here you go, try playing with that. And that's what we're dealing with. And so, you know, we don't really have that control. You know, I was reading it. Now they're talking about how the suicide numbers in young Black people are going up. Had you noticed that?
I've read something about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then I probably maybe a week after me reading something about that, because there was a boy that killed himself because he was being bullied. And he might have been 12. You know, he was being bullied. And it was probably maybe last year that they had a story about another Black child killing herself because she was being bullied. And the parent felt basically powerless, because by keeping the child home, they were wrong. And, you know, they sent the child to school and nothing was done. And, you know, they bullied them about race and hair. And so, you know, I was just reading this page, through committing homicide, the Black on Black criminal, steeped in his existential, internalized, white supremacist, instigated guilt, often seeks his own death. So all this killing, it's like you're not going to keep killing and it not come back to you. So
Right.
really what you're doing is just setting up the platform for your own death. And I think a lot of them know it. It says he desperately searches for his executioner. He provokes others to do what he himself dares not to do, to kill him as a way of killing himself, as a way of committing suicide. He is determined that his subliminal guilt must not go unpunished, so he places himself in harm's way. He compels himself to live dangerously. He falls for the ultimate sting, carrying another man's guilt. He pretends to live without it. He thinks himself a Black pantherized predator, when in reality, he has been chumped into playing the part of a sacrificial lamb, all for nothing. That's page 115. You know, so I think a lot of that is going on. He speaks about, like we talked about, being an African male in America. You know, it's like being angry. I think James Baldwin spoke about being Black in America is to be in a state of
Constant state of rage.
you
Right.
know, but you're so self-alienated that you function different. It's like you're two different people. When I'm at work, I'm a totally different person. And thankfully, because it's healthcare, it's easy for me to slip into that mode, because I don't look at teeth as race. Like, I'm just looking at teeth as, okay, that there's something wrong with that tooth, let me fix it. But probably if I worked at a law firm, or, you know, someplace where race really was deeply embedded in the day-to-day functions, it would be hard for me to function. I wasn't raised that way, and so I can't imagine being in a different profession and functioning without needing medication.
Mm.
You know, I was looking at the story of the black cop that committed suicide. Did you see that?
Mm.
He did this long live post just speaking about how he felt, like, I
Oh
guess.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
About a month and a half ago. Right, right.
So, you know, I have friends that are police officers. Two of my cousins are, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, I get why they did it. They did it because they felt like, you know, I want to be that person to interact with that neighborhood. But then it's like they don't have any power. They're just a tool or a token when they go out there and put their life on the line and something happens and they feel that they can't be themselves. They can't say, no, you're being racist, or, you know, you're treating them like an animal, but we just went to this neighborhood and this white guy beat his wife and you gave him a pat on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't ever, even in that situation, having the same gun that another cop has, they can't feel safe. And so that's very deep. You know, he was just talking about how their feelings are deeply submerged beneath layers of repression and hidden, you know, behind a friendly facade. It's like you can't speak too aggressively. You might scare someone, or, you know, you might get arrested or come across the wrong way. But at the same time, you want to be viewed as a man, you know. And so I just think, you know, it's very disturbing. I was talking with a friend the other day, you know, who was talking about homosexuality. Now, I think, yeah, there's many people that are gay. Maybe you were born and you felt like you were always gay, and that's just who you are. But I also have noticed this trend in some boys playing gay, you know, this playing gay all of a sudden. And
Little Nas X,
yeah,
different subject.
yeah, like, and I wonder, like, is that something that you're doing because you feel like you behaving as less of a so-called masculine man is somehow going to cloak you with protection? And it's
Mhm.
not, because gay trans people are out here getting killed. Gay people, it's not like anyone's gonna pull you over and say, wait a minute, are you straight or are you gay?
And that's covered in maybe another book we'll do, the ISIS Papers, Dr. Frances Cress
I
Welsing.
read it, I
She deals
got
with that. She deals with that.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of Black people get very upset, especially if they're gay, because they feel like they're being targeted or they're just not accepted. Now, that's another taboo, because it's like, again, you may not be accepted because of religious persecution, but again, who controls that narrative?
Mhm.
You know, so I feel like that's just another layer, you know, of self-hate, not necessarily them being gay, them not necessarily being accepted. You know, and you could probably go to a white church and sit next to someone gay and they be openly gay and it not be an issue. And it could be a Black person at a white person's church, and if they see someone gay, they're completely fine, but they won't accept it. It's not happening at a Baptist church. It ain't happening. You know, it's just, you know, another level of self-hate. Where else am I? Let's see.
And before we close out tonight, there is one point I wanted you to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
This book was written in 1990. Gangster rap, or
Oh
the
man.
commercialization did not start, the mass white acceptance or the mass commercialization, I butchered that word, of black on black violence did not start until 92. So
Mm-hmm.
this book isn't covering that. I mean, NWA came out really, um, came out in 88, 89, really. That's
Yep.
when their first major album came out. 88 it came out. 88, 89. This book came out in 90. White America did not embrace gangster rap until after the LA Rebellion in
Yep.
92.
Yep.
So how is this book relevant in the post gangster rap era, since this book was really written
Or
before the gangster rap era? But it
right.
was fast. This was before Menace to Society. Wait a minute. Yeah, this was before Menace to Society.
Just before it, yep. Because then
Mm-hmm.
Rodney King happened.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this relevant today when we're still dealing with 30 years later, not only black on black violence, but see, back then, black on black violence wasn't a $1 billion industry.
Right.
92, it became a $1 billion industry. That's not covered in this book. So what do you think Dr. Amos Wilson would say with the commercialization? And now this when black on black violence became a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I think well he touched on it actually. I think it was telling that he didn't touch on it dealing with rap. What he was talking about was culture. Music has always been a black thing.
Right.
Every facet of music, rock and roll, R&B, rhythm and blues, rap. It's us, and so I think that um when he touched on us not having, he touches on like our rhythm, like, or time. When someone steals your time, they steal the place where you were supposed to be.
Mm.
So, and this is in this book. So
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe he saw telltale things, because even then you think about it, like you think about Chuck Berry. Okay, Chuck Berry was doing the same thing Elvis was doing. Little Richard, same
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Now, Sam Cooke came out. He was out before then, too. And he was out when Malcolm X was out.
Right.
So I think that he realized that these were highways where we could exchange information in a safe way amongst ourselves, and share these ideas to help enlighten one another. But now, with the age of computer technology, now it's happening so fast, and people want to click on something and see an image and hear the music right away, and they want the money right away. So somehow the value of getting the knowledge out was superseded by the value of money.
Wow. Right.
And
Right.
so you had a lot of people that had the talent to rap, and they were rapping. You had Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers. I was letting my daughters listen to it, and she was like, wow, they're actually like slipping little bits of knowledge in there. And I said, yeah, but you'll notice that throughout the years, they cut back on that little by little by little. And now you have the Little Kims, the Nicki Minaj's, this WAP. That is what rap has come to. A woman shaking her ass on stage, excuse my French, showing every intimate part of her body and calling it female liberation. Like, I don't need to see that. I'm glad that you feel comfortable in your sexuality, but I didn't need to see it. You could have told me that. You could have told me that in a song that spoke about you being a mother, and I would have felt that. You didn't need to get on stage and degrade yourself and
Mm-hmm.
tell me every sexual act that you had done. No one else is doing that and calling Black women whores or bitches or calling you're never going to hear a Spanish song where they call each other a wetback or a spick. You're never going to hear a white person refer to each other as a cracker or their woman as a whore. You're never going to find that because the man in each of those cultures is allowed to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
Right.
not sold that. He's not, well, if you get this money, you can be a man again. Some point after this book, they realized, you know what? The money is going to start to become more valuable than the knowledge. You know, you get a good beat. Yeah, black people like music. So they're
Mm-hmm.
always going to feel connected to the beat. If you control that beat, you can control them. So they learned, I'm going to control this beat. It doesn't matter what they're saying. You could be saying dance. There's a rap song, I posted it, where this young black guy is talking about knock his knees out, pull his spine out. Like, he's talking about shooting somebody, murdering another black man. And it's just climbing the charts. It's just climbing the charts. You know, so, or you got Rick Ross, who used to be a correctional guard, talking about how he slipped a girl Molly, basically put a date rape drug in her drink, and this was acceptable. So, and all he had to do was take the money, you know, and he's looking successful.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't control that image anymore, because the ones of us that are really up and out there, you know, are not saying anything threatening to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see how quick they shut Kendrick Lamar down when he was on that award show and he basically was saying fuck the police.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they got really afraid. But the thing is that all their lives they've been listening to what we've been conditioned to tell them to make them comfortable. And so every once in a while, one of us gets out there and says what the masses of us are really feeling. And then he's called a racist, but this is what the masses of us are feeling. You know, so by them controlling the music, they don't have to hear that anymore.
Right.
They don't have to hear that. So when Rodney King happened, there was such an outcry, like, because it was shown, people saw it. You know, it was the media at that point decided to say, hey, this black man is a victim, even though we had been victims for centuries. But it's just that finally people saw it, you know, and so fuck the police suddenly didn't seem so far-fetched. And so they knew they had to get control of that, because people were beginning to see that, you know, you had some police that were really abusive and it was being allowed, you know. So I think this is just now happening on a grander scale, like it's blowing up. So right in between there, I think it was a slippery slope. We probably could have held on to that. You know, if we had some stronger soldiers, like, nah, I'm not selling out, and just held on to that, you know. But by losing control of that, you know, you lost the ability to touch so many younger people through music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you don't even, they don't even have to do anything. They just putting it on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they don't listen to the radio, you can go to your iPod now and it will select the next song for you.
Right.
So it's by design. You know, it's definitely by design. So yeah.
So I think this will probably be Get ending point for this section. Unless you have some more to add.
I was just, you know, it was just saying, the African American community must realize that it has the right and duty to defend itself from its criminal elements if the government to which it pays taxes and whose officials it helps to elect fails to do so.
Mhm.
So, we talk about these officials that we elect year after year. They come to the hood when it's just around when it's time for election and pose with some of the citizens and stuff, and then they go missing.
Mhm.
So I think, it's important to elect people that are on the same page. And probably something that needs to be done is like, throughout the year, see what they're about. Like it's easy to say what you're about, but like, what are they really about? Like, I know COVID makes it hard, for social events at this point in time, but sometimes, I'm curious, like, to see what people are really about. Like, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I voted this and I voted that, but is that what you're really about? Or are you just doing that to get a higher, position so then you can show your true colors, which may not match mine?
Mhm.
So I think that, we need to be aware of what a lot of these people that we're electing are really deeply about. Like, what do they support? What are their feelings and opinions on things? And maybe even have them in certain discussions and see what they're really about, instead of, voting day, we say, well, this is what they voted for in the past. Maybe they believe in what I do, but if you don't ask, you really are
Mhm.
just, you don't know.
Mhm.
So, and, I definitely think, Black people need to defend themselves. My grandmother used to say, if a fight happened at school, and it was a bad enough fight, she would rather us be taken out in handcuffs than carried out in a body bag.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, Black people in their homes need to start thinking about that, because you think you go home and you're behind your closed doors and you're safe, but you're not.
Mhm.
And you're certainly not in your neighborhood. And so I just think we have to recognize which of us is going to defend each other and band and stick together. If you see something, say something to your neighbor and let them know, hey, this is going on, and this is what I think we can do to nip it in the bud.
Right.
So that's it.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, I think this has been a very powerful discussion. Our first book study for Stick. I've already volunteered you for another book that we
Oh
talked
boy.
about. Yeah, because we talked about something in our Thursday night session. And I said, you would be great for this. I said, I'm going to let you deal with this one. So we'll talk about that offline. But
Okay.
I want to thank you. Thank you, King, for joining. Did he have any?
Oh no,
You got
no,
any closing remarks?
no, I'm just listening. I'm learning.
Okay. All
Thank
right. All right. So maybe next month, maybe we can do ISIS papers because
Ooh,
we
yeah,
we
that's
touched on ISIS papers a little bit Thursday night. Um, our Minister of Education, Brother King, but we didn't do a book review on the ISIS papers. So
yeah.
that might be a good one so we can go into some of the things we talked about tonight in more detail in the ISIS papers. Unless you want to do the other thing that we're going to talk about after the broadcast. But
Yeah.
family, I want to thank I'm sorry, sister.
Oh, I was saying ISIS papers is a good one.
Yeah,
It's
it is because it touches on a lot of things
hmm
we still, and we're still, the ISIS papers is even before 1990. So
yeah,
the ISIS papers, we're talking mid to late 80s.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to thank the family for joining us. All and those who will watch this on the replay, which is going to be on Facebook and I'm going to download this onto the YouTube page. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, sister. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. And as always, we live the Black Messiah motto: stop waiting for a savior and be one. Shalom.
Shalom.